welcome to our webinar on Cambridge IGCSE and O-level economics. I'm Laura Rogers from Cambridge University Press and Assessment, and I'll be hosting this webinar for our speakers today. Thank you all so much for joining us. So Jen, if we could move on to the next slide, I would like to quickly just introduce the webinar team for today. So first of all, we have Annette Stewart, who is a development manager in our products and services team. And Annette will be taking us through all the key changes to the Cambridge IGCSE and O-level economics syllabuses. We then have George Vlachonikolis is joining us to share his expert insights and teaching ideas. George is assistant head teacher, and he also has in-depth experience teaching economics and is the author of our digital teachers resource. We have Julia Fusey, who is a commissioning editor for our published teaching and learning resources. And Julia will be providing an overview of the new supporting resources that are available for economics. So this is including the textbooks and also school support hub materials. And my colleague Jennifer Wade and myself are also part of the international education team here at Cambridge University Press and Assessment. And I'll be hosting the webinar today, and Jen will be on hand to support throughout the session as well. And that is the end of our introduction. So now I'd like to hand over to Annette to get things started with an overview of the key changes to the syllabuses and what they mean for you.
Hello, I'm Annette Stewart, and I'm just going to run through the changes that were made to economics, having been the project manager working on that development. So first slide, please. So we're just going to run through 4 points of headlines. So the timings. So the first teaching of the new syllabus in most schools will be from this September 2025, with the first assessment in 2027. So for 2027, that's March in India, and then in June and November internationally. So the headline change on the assessment is that there will be an increase in the duration of paper 1 to 1 hour, and paper 2 will decrease to 2 hours. But the assessment is the same, so testing the same things and same types of questions. So next point, please. The syllabus aims have been slightly updated, but the meaning is largely the same. We've just made 2 new aims explicit, which is to explore the role of an economist and to inspire students to further study. And then finally, the Cambridge pathway, we have aligned the terminology for progression just to ensure that the same wording is used to describe different concepts, and that the AO3 Assessment Objective 3 evaluation weighting has been aligned to build towards the AS level. I'll tell you more about that in time. So that's the Cambridge AS level 9708. Next slide, please. So this is an overview to sort of have a view of all the changes at once. So what we would call the assessment at a glance. So you'll see in bold the changes to the durations. On the left, paper 1, 1 hour with 40 marks instead of 30. And on the right, paper 2, 2 hours, 80 marks instead of 90. And that reduction is achieved by reducing the number of parts in section A, question 1. I'll tell you more about that in a bit. But these changes mean that there will be more balance between the durations of the 2 components. So they're not evenly split, they're still 30-70 weighting, and we see a difference in the length of the examinations, but there's more balance. And this allows candidates on paper 1 to show the depth and breadth of their knowledge and skills and have more opportunity to show what they know and can do. And in paper 2, candidates can focus on source analysis in the question 1 data analysis task. and there's enough time to answer the questions fully while also maintaining concentration, as there had been some feedback from teachers that the duration on paper 2 was quite tiring for candidates. And then to say that the AO3 evaluation skills, as mentioned, that's being focused more on the section B in paper 2. So the parts we've removed from the section A are focusing on that, building towards that evaluation, so that candidates can focus more on that data. And finally, just to say that the kind of headline is the subject content has been updated, and the biggest change is to embed environment and sustainability into the content, which is key in the 21st century and was requested by teachers. So these changes help to align economics with other upper secondary business related qualifications, certainly in terms of the wording changes to the AO, like AO wording, to make them more concise. So next slide, please. Okay, so this table gives us more detail on the content. So we'll look at each of the panels, first of all looking at the content that has been removed. But just to say that all the changes were made in response to feedback from teachers and other subject experts. So in terms of what's been removed, we tried to reduce the volume of content slightly by removing discrete topics or points of content. So here on this slide, we just have some examples of what has been removed, but there is a detailed list of changes in the back page of the new syllabus for 2027, which is available on our website in the School Support Hub. So as you'll see, the discrete points here, for example, principles of taxation removed from topic 4, the trade unions topic, there's no longer a whole topic about that in topic 3, but there is still a reference to trade unions in topic 3. So candidates need to know what a trade union is, but not as much detail. Patterns of employment is no longer being assessed, as are and no longer population pyramid diagrams or the definition of the fixed exchange rate. So they're just some examples of what's been removed. A small amount of content has been added. So moving on to the next slide with the, I think we should have an arrow moving across. You go on to the, great, thanks. Small amount of content has been added in many cases. It's just been made explicit rather than it being brand new. So you may find that something that you see as listed as something that's been added, you might think, oh, well, that's been on there before, but it's just making really clear what's in scope of the content. So a few examples: arguments for and against the mixed economy in section 2, and diagrams for national minimum wage has been included in topic 3, and average total cost diagrams is explicit now in topic 3, and a new expanded topic on globalization in topic 6, looking into the causes and consequences of changes in globalization. So on to that next panel, please. So the biggest change in what has been added, as mentioned, is to embed environmental sustainability. And this panel shows each of the specific additions to the wording of the syllabus content that includes reference to the environment. So in topics 2, 4, 5 and 6, those are the specific areas, but we hope that the teaching will be embedded in the classroom more widely, but those are the areas where it's likely to come up in assessment, or for it to be certain that candidates have considered the economics of the environment. Next slide, please. So now to go through the details of the assessment a bit more. So looking at the panel on the left regarding paper 1, the multiple choice component. So in paper 1, there will be 10 extra multiple choice questions worth 1 mark each, with 15 minutes longer in the examination. Excuse me. The extra multiple choice questions will be of similar demand to past papers and will test the same balance of AO skills as currently. So it's an even split between AO1 knowledge and understanding, so 5 more questions on that, and yeah, by 50% AO2, so 5 more questions on AO2 analysis in paper 1. Now on to the next panel. In paper 2, there will be a shorter question 1, as mentioned, the data response task, with a 15-minute shorter examination. But the questions overall will be similar in style and demand to past papers. So to help candidates focus on demonstrating their data response skills, we have removed one discuss part question that attests AO3 evaluation and one part question on explain or analyse from the question 1 in section A, as these are often independent of the case study data. AO3 evaluation will still be tested in both sections of paper 2, but most of the AO3 evaluation marks will be in section B in the discuss questions and the essay style questions. So on to the next panel, please. So the assessment objectives, the wording has been simplified to be more concise, but what is assessed is the same. So these changes align with other cognate subjects such as business and accounting, and they build up towards the AO2 analysis skills, with the emphasis being put more at this level, at GCSE and O level, on AO2 analysis as a stepping stone towards evaluation. This is for progression towards the AS level, which has 20% evaluation, and we now have 10% in overall in the qualification, though the weighting is all in paper 2, so the percentage in that paper is higher, but overall it's 10%. So there's more detail on the marking criteria for paper 2 in the details of assessment section of the syllabus, and also in the paper 2 specimen mark scheme in table A, which outlines exactly what the marking criteria are for the essay style questions in section B of paper 2. So if you look at that, you'll see it's very similar to the wording of the previous mark scheme before 2027. And so, yeah, the changes to the AO wording being more concise doesn't impact what is actually assessed. And on to the next slide, please. And just to say that we are developing a range of resources to help teachers to deliver this updated syllabus. And my colleague Julia in a moment is going to talk in more depth about our Cambridge University Press and assessment textbooks, as well as the supporting resources that will be available on the School Support Hub. So I'll hand over to Julia now. Thank you.
Thank you, Annette. Hi everyone, so my name is Julia Fusey and I am a commissioning editor at Cambridge University Press, and I have been working on the new support for our economics series. But I am firstly going to talk to you about the School Support Hub. So next slide please, Jen, thank you. So the School Support Hub is our secure online site for teachers at Cambridge schools. It provides an array of curriculum support resources, and it's a really great way to keep up to date with your subject and the global Cambridge community. You can use it to get in touch with other Cambridge teachers and experienced examiners through our online discussion forums, as well as finding out a bit more about our professional development courses. So here is just a snapshot of some of the supporting resources available for economics on the School Support Hub, including a learner guide, a scheme of work, and example candidate responses. What's going to be new for 2025 is Resource Plus, and this will be available from September, and it will include additional supporting resources. So I highly recommend that you do check it out. So here is just a quick example of what our schemes of work looks like, as well as some additional activities that are available on the School Support Hub as well. But I'm also going to talk to you about our new edition of our indoor support. So we have got new editions of our course book with digital access, a workbook with digital access, and a digital teacher's resource. Our course book publishes this week, so it will be available from Thursday, and the workbook and teacher's resource are available in May. So we have updated the series with the workbook and teacher's resource following the same structure as the course book, so that all three resources can be used together. The content is split into 6 different sections, and the course book is endorsed for full syllabus coverage. The new edition of the course book has been updated to include more real-world application and provides additional engagement in class. If you are familiar with our recently published A-level course book from Cambridge, you'll recognise some of these new features as well. So we have economics in context to introduce students to the content of the chapters, as well as economics in action, which places key ideas into real-world business settings. And where possible, we've also got some strong links to sustainability, as well as discussion points for students to think about in small groups or pairs to really get them talking in class. What is also brand new for the new editions is that we have video content available, which can be accessed via Cambridge Go in the digital coursebook and teacher's resource. The video provides additional information and guidance on topics found in the coursebook, and we're just going to take about a minute to play you a very small part of one.
The problem of scarcity. Why do you think people have to make choices about how to use their resources? If there is one word fundamental to the subject of economics, it is scarcity. In simple terms, scarcity is when there isn't enough of something for everyone who wants it. Imagine a government with limited water supplies. It must decide whether to allocate more to agriculture for food production or to urban areas to ensure people have enough to drink. Or think of a firm choosing between investing in new technology or hiring more workers. Or a worker deciding between a higher-paying job with long hours and one with more stability. This is scarcity in action, making choices because resources are limited. Scarcity leads us to what economists call the basic economic problem.
So we also have a brand new teacher's resource. If you could pass it on to the next slide, please, Jen. Thank you. And you're very lucky to be hearing from our teacher's resource author very soon. So our new teacher's resource gives advice on overcoming misconceptions, language support for students who have English as an additional language, as well as background information, which explains the prior knowledge required for students to access the chapter. It also provides ideas for your teaching, such as starter activities and main teaching ideas, as well as suggestions on how to differentiate activities to support or challenge students. And also, as it comes with digital access, the videos are available there too, as well as downloadable worksheets. The workbook has also been completely updated. And as I've mentioned before, it now follows the same structure as the coursebook, which allows for more consolidation of learning. The workbook activities are scaffolded to support progression through the course, and students are also able to download activity worksheets via Cambridge Go, as the workbook does come with digital access. The workbook also contains end-of-section practice questions, which includes the opportunity for students to evaluate sample answers and to apply advice to their own answers to different questions. With Cambridge, we also have several professional development opportunities for Cambridge IGCSE economics. The best place to find out where we have what we have upcoming for our professional development calendar is on our website, and you can filter by IGCSE and economics to browse a list of upcoming courses. But please be aware that some of these will be more for the current syllabus, as this still has 2 more exam series to go. But we will be adding new courses soon. On the slide, you can also see some examples of the types of courses we have available. We have introduction courses, which are strongly recommended for teachers who are new to Cambridge or new to a specific qualification. Marking workshops enable teachers to engage with recent candidate responses to build confidence in their understanding of the assessment criteria. We also have focus on assessment courses for teachers who want to understand the assessment of the syllabus in greater depth, as well as focus on teaching courses, which are for teachers who wish to explore a specific area of teaching and learning within a syllabus. An example here would be focus on microeconomics and macroeconomics course. These courses are recommended for teachers with at least 1 year of experience teaching Cambridge programmes. All of these different courses can be either online or face-to-face, depending. So also take a look at this before booking, or do get in touch with us if you have any questions or want to find out more about our professional development support. And I am now going to hand over to George. Thank you.
Hi there. So I am the author of the Teacher's Resource, and I've got about 15 to 20 minutes really just to give you my view, the world according to George, about how you might want to use the Teacher's Resource going forward into this new specification. So first thing I'll just touch on is how I'm going to break this small section of the presentation up. First of all, just to go through the general principles that I was thinking about when putting this resource together in terms of tips to you as the teachers of how you might like to use it. And then I've got about 3 very specific ideas from the Teacher's Resource that I'll go through with you and give you some ideas about how I might actually use these particular activities in a lesson. Next slide, please, Jen. Thank you. So very quickly, just to introduce myself, I realise that I might be a new personality for many of you. So a bit of an introduction to who I am and what my area of expertise is. I would say that is threefold. Next slide, please, Jen. So really my expertise can be categorized into 3 broad areas. Like many of you, I am a teacher of economics, and I have been a teacher of economics for the best part of about 15 years. And in that time, I've also been head of department for economics as well, head of, at one time, quite a large department, and more recently, a smaller department. It's important to say, I think, at the moment, that the context for my teaching is an all-girls private school in the UK, which I know will be very different to many of you. And part of what I'm about to say in future slides is that we all have very different contexts to each other. And that's one of the challenges, but also one of the real challenges, but a positive challenge for me in putting together a resource for everybody, in terms of how you might go ahead and use that in your own context. Then just to think about assessment for a moment, it's worth me saying that I am the chair of examiners for a leading exam board in the UK for an A-level, but not an international A-level. So I think it's very important for me to be clear here that I am not part of the Cambridge International marking, like putting together the exam papers. You won't get any insights from me today about what is the content exactly going to be on the exams. All I can do is sort of talk you through the Teacher's Resource and the thinking behind the Teacher's Resource going into the new specification. Fairly recently, I also graduated from the Cambridge University's Educational Assessment postgrad course. And what that has enabled me to do is to make sure that there is a lot of assessment rigor going into this teaching resource, so that you can be sure with every teaching idea, I'm really leaning into those assessment principles of reliability, validity, and fairness. And then finally, with regards to teaching and learning. So I've been a head of department, but recently stepped up to be a head of assistant head, teaching and learning, which means that I'm responsible for the quality of education that goes throughout my school. And I'm also the PGCE lead for economics at both University of Buckingham and University of Southampton. PGCE is the Postgraduate Certificate for Education, which is the qualification that you need to be a teacher in the UK. And that means I have a very privileged position, which means that I can lead new trainee economics teachers through their early careers and give them, download to them what I think makes for good pedagogical rigor in our subject. And so if I can combine all these three things, we've got pedagogical rigor, we've got assessment rigor, and I've got 15 years worth of experience in the classroom of, I just know that this works and it works really well. This is the foundation, this is the background that I'm coming from in putting together the resource that we're going through now. Next slide, please, Jen. And again, brilliant, thank you. So this is very much George's view. This isn't Cambridge University Press's view, but my view is that we all have a very, very different context to each other. Just looking at your introductions earlier, there's an awful lot of you on the complete opposite side of the world to me today, in a very different time zone to me. This is, for me, 8:30 in the morning, so normally when school would start, but for many of you, it's either lunchtime or in the evening. So we have a very different context, both in terms of geography, but we have a very different context in terms of who is in front of us on any given day. And like I say, my context is that I'm at an all-girls school, but I'm sure for many of you, you will be at either mixed schools or you'll be at all-boys schools, so you'll have a very different context in terms of gender in front of you. But it also might be, I work in a very central city centre school. Some of you might work in rural areas. Some of you might work in incredibly rich schools that have access to all of the modern devices, interactive whiteboards, iPads for all students, and others won't. We all have incredibly different contexts to each other. And so what I think I bring to the party here is an appreciation and empathy that not all teachers teach in the same location with the same students. And really, you don't necessarily want to be told, here's what you have to do, but you want ideas. Because I think it's the ideas that are an important thing. And I'm glad that the teaching resource that we have labeled things as ideas rather than prescriptive, you must do X in order to achieve Y. So it's really just ideas. And with that comes an implied task. Next animation, please, Jen. The implied task of the teacher's resource is that you might need to adjust some of the teaching ideas to adjust it to your context. And you will be the expert here. You will know what works for your students, and you will know what doesn't work for your students. So, for example, if I've used a particular case study to illuminate a particular economic concept, you might decide that actually that case study doesn't work brilliantly. You like the ideas of the lesson in general, but you're going to change the case study. That's absolutely fine. And I just want to state the obvious, which is you have permission to tweak those teaching ideas to best suit you, your context, and your students. Equally, you might need to adjust some of the timings. So for example, if I've said that a particular activity might take 30 minutes, it might be that in front of you today, you have a particularly weak cohort, and actually that activity might take much longer than 30 minutes because you know you've got to do some more exposition in order to get the ideas across. Or equally, it might be because you have a very highly able class, and actually you want to extend the teaching activity because you know that you have some really curious and ambitious students who just want to go off-piste and want to inquire about different things. I'm also realised that some of us are under a lot of time pressure in class, and so whilst I've given 30 minutes for the activity, you might decide that actually you need to get this done today because you're under time pressure for tomorrow to set up a different, to get onto a different part of the specification. And so you should feel able that you can contract the lesson idea, maybe just take part of the lesson, and instead of being a 30-minute activity, it's a 15-minute activity. So just to sum up this slide then, Jen, with the last final point, my aim, my overarching aim then with the teaching resource is that I really, really want to make sure that you feel that you have the agency, the autonomy to do what you want with the resource, to follow it prescriptively if you want, but also to tweak the ideas as you wish, but to also make sure that every single activity has a high degree of pedagogical integrity and also assessment activity integrity built in. So with that, let's move on and let's have a look at 3 different activities that you will see in the teacher's resource. So first of all, and I'm not assuming that you're going to read this all in the time, but this is an activity, it's a plenary idea. So this means that it will come at the end of a topic. You can see that the title says market and individual demand. So off the top of my head, I think this is 2.2.1 of the specification. And I've said that this is a lesson that I use every single year, multiple times, because I usually have more than one class. One of the things that I will do is that I will get students to imagine that they are eating a small snack. They'll write down how much money they would be willing to spend on the snack. Then they imagine that they've eaten the snack. How much will they pay for the second one? And after they've eaten the second one, how about the third one? And how about the fourth one? And all of this will give them a load of different data points that they can then use to build an individual demand curve. Now, already I can see many different ways that you might want to tweak and adjust that lesson for your context. So, for example, I've done a lesson before where actually it's not a hypothetical anymore. Actually, I've gone out and I've bought biscuits or I've bought Jaffa cakes or chocolates for them to actually do this properly. So how much would you be willing to pay for the first biscuit? Then eat the biscuit. How much do you really want to pay for the second biscuit? And then eat that biscuit. And the underlying principle here is the law of diminishing marginal utility, sure. But whether we're getting them to do it hypothetically or we're getting them to do it physically, that's a question for you and how you want to interpret this particular activity. Then the lesson goes on and it says that what we can do is we can split students into groups of 3. We can ask them to plot a market demand curve. Now, for some, this might be quite ambitious. It might be that you think, well, the students in a group probably won't be able to do that by themselves. So you might decide that you need some extra scaffolding in there. You might want to show them a little bit extra. But I've also seen classes in which actually the teachers are ambitious in the sense that they want their students to use Excel spreadsheets. And instead of plotting this on pens and paper, they've got their students to open an Excel spreadsheet or similar Google Sheets or whatever it might be, and start plotting the data. And actually that aligns really nicely with some IT skills behind there so that they can plot the data on a computer rather than plotting the data online. Oh, sorry, on pen and paper. So there's lots of different ways in which you can interpret this particular activity. My assessment idea, remember, I'm thinking here about good assessment integrity. Formative assessment. It's a great opportunity for teachers that I think sometimes teachers overlook. Get around the student. My vision for this particular activity is circulating around the class, seeing what the students are doing in the moment, checking for understanding, looking for misconceptions and trying to feed back in the moment and make the corrections as and when. So I've got a good formative assessment going on with that activity as well. Let's move on to the second one, Jen, and I'll try and speed up so that we finish on time. So this one here is about price elasticity of demand. So this would be 2.6.1 on the specification. I'm sure all of you have your own ideas for teaching price elasticity of demand, but this is another one to add to your repertoire. And here I'm giving 10 selected goods and services, but again, these are 10 selected by George, and you should feel that you have permission to change those goods and services to meet your particular contexts. As has already been said by Annette and Julia, the specification is changed in such a way that we want to inspire further study, that we want to think about the role of the economist. We want to bring in this idea of environmental globalization and sustainability into the world. So I've tried as much as possible in my examples and in my case studies to bring that in. That's Hence why you get things like e-books, bike rentals, and organic vegetables. Yeah, we're living in a modern world with environmentally sustainable products. But if you feel for some reason that these products don't meet your audience, don't really land in your particular country, then fine. Feel free to change them as much as possible. Now, this is an activity that is really rooted in high quality oracy, because what I'm envisaging here is that you first of all are asking the students to think about what a 20% increase in the price would do to the quantity demanded, the sales of the good. But then the real interesting bit about the activity is the final bit, where the students in their different groups are essentially debating with one another, discussing with one another of what the real answer is likely to be, or justifying their own answer. So this is high quality oracy discussion. Now, again, some of you might look at that and think, I'm not sure that will work in my class, in which case I will say, well, tweak that to how you think. Maybe instead of a verbal lesson, then maybe make it a more written justification. But for me, I'm a big believer in high value oracy within pedagogy, and so that's why I put it into this particular activity. One more, please, Jen. Again, and I think Julia brought this up in her presentation. Each idea, this is one of the main teaching ideas. Each of these has a differentiation idea in terms of support. If we might have a couple of individuals in our lesson who are relatively weak and need some extra scaffolding, I've put in here how we can hopefully scaffold to them. In this case, it would be a bit of a teacher-led explanation, exposition at the front. But equally, if we have very strong students, then I've put in a challenge task. And the challenge here would be, right, you've decided that salt, for example, is price inelastic. Well, how about you try and make the case to me that salt in some contexts might be more price elastic? They might go on and talk about Himalayan pink salt or something like that, if they're really strong and able. Finally then, the assessment idea. Again, that's a good example of formative assessment, circulating and really looking during the lesson about what it is that the students are doing, where they're making the misconceptions, and then pointing them in the right direction. And finally, the third and final activity to just go through today. This again is a plenary idea, so this would come at the end of the labour markets topic. This one is about diagrams, because as we all know as economics teachers, diagrams are the most important element, or at least one of the important elements, but they're a great differentiator between those students that are aiming for the top grades and those that are perhaps going to fall just below the top grades. If you can get the diagrams right, you're normally on the journey to real high quality success. So in this case, I've used mini whiteboards. Now again, I understand that not everybody has access to the same resources as me and as each other. So if you don't have mini whiteboards, normally there is a suitable alternative for everybody. You can just do this with pens and paper. But the beauty of whiteboards, obviously, though, is you can do a kind of reveal to the teacher all at once, or the students perhaps can feel that it's easier to scribble out their work and to make corrections if they need to. So we're doing whiteboard diagrams. It's relatively fast paced. I've only left 15 minutes for this. And again, I've given some contexts here. Context which may work for you, context that may not work for you. All I've tried to do, as I say, is I'm leaning into these kind of modern day case studies, thinking about what might make for inspiring or interesting ideas. But it is absolutely within your remit to change those particular case studies as you see fit, as you see they will land with your students. And with this, again, the assessment idea is the diagrams themselves. Not all of them are formative assessments, by the way. There are some summative assessments built in. But why I like this one, why I wanted to share this one with you, is I think this makes for a really good example of a low stakes formative assessment. If, like me, your students get quite anxious about the idea of an end of topic test or a mock exam, I quite like to use the low stakes formative assessment. Do it in the class in front of me now so I can see it. Everybody else is working away on their own project. So if there is an issue, if there's a problem that I need to correct, we can do it privately, and we don't have to make any sort of public failure, or sorry, rather any public failure more public to everybody else. So that's why I liked this one-on-one, why I wanted to share it with you. Okay, I think that is me done. So I will hand over to the next presenter. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you so much to Annette, Julia and George for those fantastic presentations. It's very much appreciated. And it's really helpful to hear about all the changes to the syllabus and the new updates to the teaching and learning resources as well, and to hear some teaching ideas and examples from George there, especially in terms of how you might adapt these activities to suit your teaching and to suit your class. Thank you so much for attending the session today. We hope you've enjoyed it and found it useful and informative. Again, we will be sharing the recording and the slides so you can have those to look back on, and you can use the email as proof of your attendance, as unfortunately we're not able to provide certificates for this session. For more information about what we've discussed today, please do speak to your local team or visit the links that we will be sharing in the email. And another huge thank you to Annette, George and Julia, and also Jen, for all of your help putting together such a fantastic webinar today. And the last thing that there is to say is just that when the webinar ends, there will be a short survey that will pop up to complete. We would really appreciate your feedback on the webinar so we can continue to improve these sessions for you in the future. And thank you for any answers you provide there. So good luck with all of your teaching, and thank you for joining us today. Have a great day. Goodbye.